good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be joining us from. I bid you a good day. My name is Paul Bradley. I'm Managing Director of Spoke Project Management. We're one of the leading training organisations for project program and portfolio management. So I'd like to think you're in good hands. This is the last of the series of 4 that I've delivered this week. What I'm going to do is just share the presentation for you so you can see the 4 sessions that I've done this week from Monday through to today. We've done Absolute Beginners, Changes, Let's Dance on Rebel. All got a common theme there. Absolute Beginners was an overview of project management. Changes was setting up the project and understanding the requirements. Yesterday, Let's Dance. That was very much about getting things done and progressing matters. And today, going to do Rebel. So we're going to be looking at tracking the plan as we go through the time frame, and also what happens when things maybe go adrift. Okay, so we're going to be looking at quite a lot today. I've got a lot of slides to cover, but hopefully it'll give you plenty of value over the next hour. Okay, this is the agenda for today: reporting and updating the schedule, controlling the plan, managing risks, mainly looking at the risk management procedure. Same with issues and changes as well. I've got a change control procedure to show you, and then finally how we close out. So without further ado, I think we should press on nice and quickly. So what we've got is firstly reporting and updating the schedule. Now, firstly, before I do this, those of you who were with me earlier in the week will recognise this slide. I'm just going to put all these on there so that you can see what I'm talking about. This is basically looking at what is it that we're trying to track through the project life cycle. This is the contents of the PID or the PMP. Okay, you've got all sorts of ways of undertaking the project. So you've got the project approach and business case, the reasons for doing the project. You've got various ways of managing it in terms of how we're going to manage quality and risk and issues and such. You've got the people who are involved, and then you've got a number of controls in terms of the formality of how we manage the project. Now, all of this, the reason I put this up is because this is the stuff that we're tracking. Okay, we've got a project plan, we've got a stage plans, we've got team plans. We get these all signed off, and we get the authorization to run the project according to what we put in the PID. Now, of course, what we need to do is we need to manage this in terms of monitoring and controlling those plans so that everybody's kept informed. Now, the way we do that is we got a PDCA cycle. Okay, we plan the project in terms of putting our plans together. Okay, and again, if you were with me earlier in the week, you would have seen me put together, a project type of plan with activities in it. I would be looking at identifying management stages where the key decision points need to be clearly defined. This will mean that I can put together a more detailed stage level plan, get it signed off, and I'm okay to go from here to here. As I come along the plan, towards the end of that stage, I can do the next stage plan and then the next stage plan. So I'm creating this more detailed high density planning as I get to each next stage of the project. Okay, so that's what I do. I'll put together the project plan, or it may be that I've put together a stage plan. Okay, and what I need to do is with that stage plan, I need to do the work. Okay, I'll do that by delegating work to the teams. We'll have a closer look at that later on. As a result of that, we need to check the progress. Are we on track according to what the plan says? It needs to be according to what the plan says because that's what's been approved. There's a phrase that I often use, which is the tail wagging the dog. We don't want to be in a situation with the tail wagging the dog. The plan is the dog and it needs to wag the tail. Okay, so essentially we have this plan so that we know what we're supposed to be doing. All too often I see plans that are updated showing the what's actually happening, and we'll just make the plan fit in terms of what we've done, and that's not really how it should be. It should be the other way around, with the plan driving the activity. Okay. So we need to check progress. That's all about monitoring, making sure we're on track, sure things are happening as they should be. And of course, there are going to be times when we do need to modify the plan and take corrective action. Okay, so we will identify where this action needs to be undertaken, what additional activities we might need to put into the plan. Okay? And from there, what we can do is we can do the replanning, whether that be at project or stage level, and then we're in that cycle again. And that's how that monitoring and controlling cycle happens. We've also got a general reporting cycle because we need to impart this information and pass the information on through reporting. And the way we do this is, as we're collecting reports from our teams and monitoring the plan, we're receiving issues and risks and dealing with those accordingly. Lots of things going on. We need to collect that information and analyze it, review the information to see what it means to our plans, and then we need to make decisions based on that. So this is very much overlaying the previous diagram that I was just showing you, where we are now starting to look at whether we need to control the plan and make adjustments to it. Of course, if we are doing that, we need to think about who we need to inform. Now, as we run through the project, we would have been authorized by the project sponsor, okay, or the project executive, SRO, responsible business owner, whichever you might call them. Okay, we are working for someone, and therefore we need to keep them informed. But do we need to keep them informed on everything? Well, it depends what's happening, doesn't it? And this is where we need to review that information and make decisions on whether we escalate and report on everything we're doing. Okay, so we can gather all that data together and then decide whether we are going to pass that on for reporting purposes. Now, any information that we are gathering and reporting on needs to be accurate. And nothing worse than giving information and reporting with inaccurate information, especially if the recipient has got a later version than you have. Okay, so make sure that your information is accurate. You also need to make sure it's relevant as well, relevant to the people that it's going to. Really need to know your audience. Okay, and understand your audience in terms of what they're looking for. If you're giving information to your project board members or your board of directors, they're unlikely to want the more detailed technical information, and vice versa. If you're dealing with suppliers, you don't want to be giving them the business information from your own organisation. So accurate and clear information accurate and relevant. The information also needs to be clear. Some people like graphs, some people like charts. You might have a high-level milestone plan. It may well be that it's more clearer in a pen picture, a text-based information. People want different things. So coming back to the relevance in terms of your audience, think about how people like to receive information and what they do with it. A lot of these situations and circumstances are going to require just high-level one-pagers, nice and simple. Okay, if you get asked for a one-page summary detail of the project, that's a bit of a contradiction in terms. We have been asked for that before many, many times. A detailed one-page summary. Okay, you either want one or the other. Anyway, so nice and clear. Okay, and also timely. Okay, information that we're sending to people needs to be on a timely basis. You may well have requirements for monthly reports, for example, that needs to go to your stakeholders. It may be that you need to align your project with your organisation's reporting requirements, and therefore it needs to be timely in that respect as well. Okay, so lots of different things to think about there in terms of providing information and the needs that brings. I'm going to move into controlling the plan now. When we're looking at controlling the plan, what we do is we tend to work on two different types of control. One type of control is event driven, based on what's happening. Okay, this would be things such as towards the end of a stage that brings about a control point because because we're finishing the work. It may be based on an issue that is raised, and it's an issue because something's happened, and therefore it's an event-based mechanism, event-based control. We also have time-driven controls as well, and time-driven controls are defined reporting periods, for example. So you might have weekly reports from your teams and monthly stage level reports that you send to your project board or your governance board, and there'll be time-driven controls because we state the timing of them. There's not too many time-driven controls. They would largely just be the reports because the timeframes are agreed between the teams and the people. And the event-driven controls are the overriding area. The benefit of event-driven controls are that we're not just having meetings because it happens to be the 25th of the month. If we have a time-driven control like that, quite often we're getting people together, we haven't got any decisions to make, and it's a bit of a waste of time for everybody. So this is why we try to encourage event-driven control throughout the project. In terms of what we're trying to control, we've got baselines for project or baselines for progress control. There's various baselines that we would look at trying to keep on top of. One being the project plan. Okay, that will be for the overall project. We've got the stage level plans, as you can see, that's just come up on the red outline. A plan for each stage of our project. Okay, the reason these are all baselined is because what's happening is the project plan is being signed off at the end of the initiation stage, okay, for the overall project, and that's baseline. Each stage level plan will be signed off before it actually gets underway. So, you know, at the beginning of each stage, we get authorization to manage the next stage. And that becomes a baseline. So any changes to it need to go through the proper procedure of change control. Exception plans, well, they follow the same pathway really of stage plans. And then we got work packages. Okay, so each individual work package would form a baseline for the teams to work and carry out the work, and the baseline will be defined in the timescales and costs and so on. Okay, so that works really well in our favour with regard to understanding what we're trying to control, what we're reporting on, and what we need to do. In terms of delegating the work, because work needs to happen in order for us to track how the progress of that work is happening, what we do is we tend to use a product or a management information called a work package. Now, a work package will cover many different things. I'm not going to go through every single one of these entries on the work package, but essentially, typically, you'd be looking at identifying who's authorized to work on the work package. We're looking at any particular ways that the work needs to be carried out, you know, looking at processes, standards, quality systems that need to be interfaced with, and so on. Okay. We're also looking at agreements on time, cost, as well as any deviation from that time and cost that may be permissible. That's known as tolerance. I am going to give you a quick overview of tolerance later on. I'm going to give you a quick overview of a lot of things later on by the sounds of it. Any constraints, you know, might be security constraints, time constraints, resource constraints, and so on. Reporting arrangements. How often do you want to be informed from the teams? So these are usually like checkpoint reports or team reports, progress reports. How problems need to be handled. Okay, so you know, do they pick up the phone, or do they send you an email, or do they come and see you with all the relevant information? And then any approval that needs to be carried out on the work that's being done. So we assemble the work packages as project managers during the stage planning, so we can start to work out the work streams. We can usually derive that information from the work breakdown structures, and I spoke about work breakdown structures. I think it was on Tuesday, either Tuesday or Wednesday. You can look back on the recordings if you want to get those recordings from my team. They can provide you with the links to the recordings from the previous 3 days that we've done. And what will happen is, the way this works is you've got the project manager there. The project manager will authorize the work package. Okay, and that means that they send that work package to their team members. Okay, and team managers. And what will happen is the the project manager authorizes the work package and the team manager will accept it. And here is the work package being authorized. Okay. And the purpose is it passes responsibility of work to the team manager for delivering that work. Okay. And what will happen is the team manager will manage that work and make sure that the work package is executed, which means that the all the deliverables and outputs within that work package will be developed, tested, and completed. And then once completed, the team manager can deliver that work package back to the project manager. Okay, all good stuff. As part of the executing the work package, what the team manager will be doing as well is providing reports on progress back to the project manager into review work package status. And this Okay, back again. I hope yeah, you're all still here. If you can hear me now, which I suspect you probably can do, by all means, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, I got a few thumbs up there. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on with this, okay? But I think what I might do, um, maybe sometime tomorrow. I'm going to record it again, I think, and get JP to send you a nice clean recording. This recording will still be available for everybody, but I think I'll just do a new one, and that way we've got a nice polished one, and we can all pretend that that never actually happened. Not quite sure what happened. I think my microphone's just become unattached to the laptop. I don't know. Anyway, let's carry on. So what I did is I just took you through the delegating work with the work package. We took you through this whole process here of the project manager authorizing work to the teams and then that work coming back. And I was just taking you through the reporting cycles here. Okay, so in terms of reviewing progress, as we get work back from the teams, or not just work, but reports from the teams on updates of progress, what we can do then as project managers at project level in the stage, we can review progress. Okay, so what we need for all of this is a current stage plan, checkpoint reports from the teams, okay, details of issues and risks, because we're going to report on all of this stuff. It may well be the daily log as well, because that could be a project manager diary that we use just to keep on top of things, things that are less formal, if you like. Okay. Anyway, all good stuff. What we do with all of this is we review our stage plan against, what was supposed to be happening against what is actually happening. Okay, have a look at the overall stage and take corrective action if we need to. And if we do need to take corrective action, what we can do there is we can see building up. We've got details of the plan. We've got a couple of red things come up in that plan schedule now. That may be where we're running a little bit behind time, or we've had to put in some extra activities in order to keep the plan on track. Okay, and then of course what comes out of there, as you can imagine, is an updated plan stage, and also updated details of risks and issues, because it may well be that as a result of adding in some extra work here and updating the plan, suddenly that's maybe have resolved some risks. It may well have brought to the fore additional risks. Okay, so lots of things that are affected as a result of reviewing progress, but we need this information here in the top left hand corner in order to understand what we're supposed to be doing. We take the information from the teams and from our current stage, update the plan, and then that gives us an updated plan and updated risks and so on. Okay, so that's all good stuff. Okay, with regards to progress from the teams, we have checkpoint reports or team progress reports, call them what you like. Okay, and typically they'd have a detailed period for the last week or the last few days, however often you want them to be sent to you. So in this reporting period, there'll be a summary of the products that have been completed, any quality statistics in terms of quality reviews that have been carried out, and any lessons that they can bring forward. What's going to happen in the next reporting period? Okay, so essentially what we've got here is this is what we've done. This is what we will do. Okay, and then from there that will go to the project manager, where the project manager can update their plan and report on that to the project manager. Okay. Of course, what will happen then is all of this information will go into a highlight report or a project status report, and that will go to the sponsor. Okay. Right. Now then, managing risks. I've got a risk management procedure here because as we are updating the plan and progressing the stage of the project, we need to keep an eye on risks. Now, we do risk identification early on in the project, even before the project starts, to identify major threats. But we've also got managing risks at every step of planning the stage of the project. And also, if anybody raises an issue or something happens, we need to keep an eye on risks as well, generally. Now, firstly, we identify risks. And the way we identify risks is we might have workshops. Yeah, we might have checklists and so on. And what will happen is all these risks are going to be put onto a risk register. What we can then do, once we understand the risks that we have potentially in our project, we can then assess them. And the way we assess them is we calculate what their probability is. So probability, okay, that's usually represented by a percentage, 10% chance, 15% chance, 80% chance. We have impact, okay, and the impact, this is where I'm going to go a little bit mad on this. Let's change color. Okay, so the impact will be on time, cost, quality, I don't know what else, scope, benefits, other risks. So lots of things we've got to think about in terms of the impact should this risk happen. Okay, and that's our assessment. What we can then do is we can then start looking at selecting responses. What can we do about it, if anything? Well, we might not want to do anything about it. It might be that the risk is so unlikely to happen, or maybe it's something that we just can't affect if we did anything. So it may well be we'll just accept it. Okay. It may well be, though, that we can reduce. We can reduce the likelihood of it happening, or we could reduce the impact of it. We're also thinking about maybe contingency, i.e. plan B. Yeah, it's another approach. Yeah, have another plan on standby, ready to trigger in to replace the situation should the risk happen. Okay. So there's lots of things we can think about with regards to responses. There are many others, but we won't go into them just now. What we then need to do is decide what we're going to do. Okay. That will mean putting in those responses and integrating those into our plan. Now, of course, this costs money. So you've got to decide where it's worth spending the money on that risk mitigation versus what the impact of the risk may be. Okay. And once we've made that decision, we can then implement that plan, allocate people to monitor the risk and undertake the actions that we've decided. And then as a result of that, change color just one more time, as a result of implementing these risks, we don't stop there. What we do is we come back to sometimes here or into here, okay, to make sure that our risks and our responses are under control. Are the responses and actions that we're doing containing the risk, or are the risks increasing? Are they stable, or are they decreasing? So this is very much a cycle, okay? And that's how we manage risks, all the time updating that risk register, keeping things informed. Good. So progressing through the stage and our plan. As I say, I've got quite a lot of content for you here, so do bear with me. As we progress through the plan, we're getting all of these reports. We're seeing what was planned, what's actually happened, what the difference is between what's planned and what's actually happened, and we're using this sort of information to help us predict the future. Okay, if I've overspent by 10%, what does that mean I'm going to be at the end of the project? Okay, so I've got to use all this information. And one of the techniques that I can use for this information is earned value analysis. Okay. And I'm not going to go through the whole technique of earned value. Okay, there's quite a lot to it. There's actually a 5-day course on earned value management, but hey, we won't go that far. But what we do is we need three basic pieces of information. Okay, we need planned cost. And planned cost is basically what we plan to do and the cost of undertaking that schedule. Okay, so what we planned, we've also need to understand what we've delivered so far. Okay, so if I'm like, I don't know, a third of the way through a particular project, I've got a plan for that project. So I've got my planned cost. I'm a third of the way through. So you think, well, have I spent a third of the money? Have I achieved a third of the value so far? Well, maybe you have, but you need to have some form of workshop there to really understand what value you've earned so far. You might have a warehouse full of goods. Okay. You might have 3 or 4 deliverables already made up, quality reviewed, ready to go. So there's value to that. That may be consistent with what you planned. It may be consistent with what you spent. I don't know. You might have spent half your planned money, but only achieved a third of the value so far, or vice versa. So what we need to do is we need to understand how much value we've got at this point in time. Okay. And also what the actual cost is that we've spent. So if I just put this on a simple chart, okay, what I typically have is I have a detail here of what my planned spend might be, like that. Okay. At the moment, by the way, let's say I'm here at the moment. Okay. So this is where I'm at. So I should have spent, according to my plan, this much. Okay. What I've actually spent is maybe this much. Okay. And my value, my earned value, that is what I've achieved in terms of value, maybe, I don't know, let's say this much. I'm going to be positive for a change. Usually I go underneath the black splotch, but let's do that. And what I've got is I've got 3 key pieces of information here. And what I can do is I can start looking at what the differences are, in terms of what I plan to spend, which is the black square. There's a difference between what I plan to spend and what I've actually spent. Okay. Okay, so there's a variance there. There's also a difference between what I've actually spent and what my actual value is as well. I think, interesting. So what am I going to do with all of this? Well, I'll tell you what you're going to do with it all. Okay, so you need these three basic pieces of information, and you can do so much with it. Okay, what you can do is you can calculate what we call CPI and SPI, so cost performance and schedule performance indexes. And what we do is we take those 3 pieces of information, so earned value, for example, okay, we take the earned value and we will divide the earned value by the actual cost. And if you divide your earned value by your actual cost, that will give you a cost performance index. It will give you a percentage. So if you've got if the result of dividing your earned value by your actual cost gives you any number less than 1, okay, so you might have 0.90, that means in terms of your cost performance, you're running at 90%. So you're going to overspend, okay? Because every pound you're spending, you're getting a value of 90p. Okay. You can also do this with the schedule performance index. And to understand the schedule performance index, what you do is you divide your earned value by your planned cost. Okay. And that will give you a schedule performance index of, well, could be 0.9, it could be 1.1. Okay, if you transfer that into percentages, you might have a cost performance index of 90% and a schedule performance index of, I don't know, maybe 95%. Yeah, which would suggest that I'm underspending. Oh, sorry, I'm going to overspend, and also I'm going to go over time. Okay, if I was bang on track both my SPI and CPI would be on 1. Okay, so 100%. If I'm 100% efficient and 100% efficient on schedule as well, then I'm on time and on budget. Okay, if my cost performance index is saying 110%, I'm going to underspend. Okay, so I'm currently underspending. If I'm now running behind time but underspending, it's probably because I'm not spending money on the resources I need to. So you can get a lot of information around this, but also what you can do is you can look at the cost variance. So you basically, with the cost variance, all we're doing here, quite simply, is subtracting our actual cost from our earned value. So you look at how much we've earned so far, subtract how much you've actually spent, and that will tell you whether you're ahead or behind your budget. Okay, are you over or under? And it's the same with a schedule. Take your earned value and subtract the planned cost, and it will tell you whether you're ahead or by how much you're ahead and behind schedule. And then the final ones here that I've got for you, in terms of forecasting final cost and final schedule, what you do is basically you divide your budgeted cost, so your overall budgeted cost, by your CPI, your cost performance index. And what that will give you, that will give you a figure in terms of what your final costs are likely to be if you carry on at this rate. You know, if that CPI rate continues at that point, it will give you your final cost. And it's the same with duration as well. You divide your planned duration by your schedule performance index, and that will give you your overall time frame. Okay. Of course, it's assuming that you're going to carry on at the current CPI and SPI rates. But it's a great way of forecasting based on actual facts. Okay, really, really good. Great technique. If you want more information on it, obviously get in touch with us. But I'll tell you what I do. I'll fire up YouTube, yeah, and you know, watch a 3-4 minute video and then watch another one, because some of them are a bit rubbish and sometimes a little inaccurate, but generally they're quite good actually. Yeah, 3 or 4 minute video and suddenly you're an expert. Okay, a little bit of advice there. Based on those forecasts, it may well be that we're forecasting that we're going to come in under budget and on time, maybe on budget, over time, whichever. Okay, and what we have is we have a tool that's available to us called manage by exception. And essentially what it means there's a permissible deviation to time and cost. Okay, and typically what would happen is the corporate program management level here would authorize the project sponsor a particular budget, okay, for the project, plus or minus perhaps 10% or 20% even on cost or time. What can then happen is that project steering group or project board, call it what you will use that project budget and provide authorization to the project manager to give stage level budgets and timescales, plus or minus maybe 10%, because they have to keep within their tolerance. And then the project manager may well authorize a work package to a team manager and say, okay, then you got £10,000 to do this piece of work, plus or minus 5%. Okay, the plus and minus doesn't have to be the same, by the way. Okay, but what it is a way of giving a permissible deviation. Okay, so if I've got a plan here, and that's my agreement, if you like, what I can do is we may well have plus or minus an amount, so that as I'm coming through my actual progress, you know, I can deviate at any point along there. I'm still aiming for my target, yeah. But if I'm deviating within my tolerances and I'm forecasting I'm going to be fine and come back in, then that's cool. I don't have to escalate to the next level. However, if I forecast that I am going to exceed the tolerance levels, then of course what happens is the team manager will alert the project manager. The project manager will look at the stage tolerances, and if they're going to be exceeded, they will escalate using an exception report to the project board, and then the project board or steering group will escalate any project level exceptions to the corporate program management level. It's called management by exception. It works really well because it means it's reducing the amount of involvement that's happening when there could be quite a number of small deviations that are forecast in your project. Okay? Works really, really well if you can get it in place and up and running nicely. Okay. What I've done is I've put it together a simple pathway on this. Okay, so issue escalation and managed by exception. Typically, what would happen is an issue would come in to the project manager. Okay, it may be that work package tolerance has exceeded. It may be that somebody's gone on holiday unexpectedly. It might be a collapse of suppliers, and now we're going to overrun. Anyway, what would happen is the project manager would register the issue on the issue register. Okay, and then carry out an impact analysis. And that impact analysis is the impact on the time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, risk at project level, stage level. Okay, look at impacts on other products and so on. And then what would happen is at this point, okay, before I go on to the next point, if the project manager can resolve this issue within their tolerances, then do it. That's what you get paid for. Okay, making things work. Okay, steal a bit of time from somewhere to add somewhere else, and use a bit of cost tolerance to cross-reference with some time tolerance, get things working well. Okay, and that's what we do. Update the plans, trigger some new work packages. Everything's lovely. Bring it all back in time. Okay, what happens though is if the stage tolerance is forecast to be exceeded, well, then it's no longer the project manager's decision. Okay, and what they will need to do is they'll need to raise an exception report, and what that does is that goes to the project board for a decision. Okay, so basically here is the project manager saying, I'm outside of my authority now, so what do you want me to do? So that exception report goes to the project board where they will make a decision. If the exception is so big that it's exceeding the project tolerances, then it needs to go up to the next level, to corporate management. Otherwise, what may happen, there's a few things that could happen at this point. Okay, it could well be that the project board say, look, we understand what the problem is, and what I want you to do is I want you to create an exception plan for me. Okay, and that exception plan is going to cover the point from where we're at the moment to the rest of the current stage. Okay. The reason the project manager doesn't go into exception planning before they raise it to the board is because it might not be needed. It may well be that the project board say, finish it. Yeah, this is too much of a deviation. We're gonna close the project early. So you'd be wasting your time doing an exception plan. It may well be the project board removes the cause of that particular delay or the issue, whichever it may be. They may give you more money anyway, out of their own tolerances, rather than go through the whole exception planning cycle. Okay, or they might defer a decision, which isn't ideal because we are in exception and we can't really do much more until we get a decision from them. Okay, so if they request an exception plan, we create the exception plan, and that exception plan will cover the period of time from where we're at to the end of the current stage. Okay. If approved, the exception plan will replace our current stage plan, and it effectively becomes stage plan version 2. Okay. Right. Okay then. And this is for issues, but we also have a similar process for changes as well. Okay. And what I'm going to do, let's get rid of all of that. I do have a change control procedure on the next slide for you, but I'm just going to do it here as well, though, because with the issues can be a general issue, i.e. like an overspend or an overrun or a staffing problem, resourcing problem. It could be a request for change, or there could be what we call an off specification. Okay. Now these two here request for change and off specification go through the change control process, because a request for change is where your customer's asking for something different or extra. And an off specification is where the suppliers should have delivered something, but it's not right. It's failed a quality review. Okay. So those two they come under the change control approach. And what would happen is, with that change control approach, we need to get authorization from either a change board or from the project board to authorize a request for change or to accept an off specification as it is. Okay, now clearly with an off specification, it may well be that we've got enough tolerance to rework it and do the remedial work anyway. But it's always worth checking to see whether an off spec might be accepted in its current format. Okay, because it may not need additional work. It's good enough as it is. So we'll just get on with it rather than delay anything any further. If there's a exception to making a change or making an off specification right, then of course we're back into that exception reporting. Okay, so the project manager always needs to operate within their tolerance. If not, they escalate. But also, a key point to make is that general issues follow this process. Off specifications and requests for changes, regardless, even if we can pay for a change within our tolerance, we still got to get authorization to make that change. Okay, even if you've got all the money and all the time in the world, okay, you've got to get authorization for that change. And the way we do that is we use the change control process. Okay, so the first step in the change control process is to capture. Okay, so we capture the change, and it's either going to be a request for change or an off spec. Okay, so we'll categorize it. We'll have a description of it. Okay, and that way it's in the system. What we then do is then we can assess. Okay, assess and analyze that request for change or off specification, depending what it is. And that's looking, it's going to look quite familiar, I'm afraid. But what this is doing is looking at the cost, time, impact on other products and outputs. Okay, impact on the quality of the deliverable. Is it going to affect quality? Okay, and how is it going to affect my other plans, my stage and my project plan? How's it going to affect any risks? Okay, so on. So that's what I'm doing in terms of assessing this. What I can then do is I can do a full analysis of this information, okay, where I'm looking at how this affects my overall project, okay, analysing the data accordingly. Part of the assessment, by the way, one thing I should have mentioned, what we do here, really, as part of this period here, is we would go to the project sponsor just for an initial assessment. This assessment here is saying, look, project sponsor, yeah, this change has come up. I am going to do the full analysis and all this stuff, but just to ask you, I've got this off specification. Is there any way that this might be able to be accepted as it is without any additional work? If the answer is yes, then we don't need to go through everything else. If the answer is no, get a supplier to put it right. Then we go and get the supplier to put it right. If we're talking about a request for change, it's the same situation. Have a quick chat first. Yeah, is this something we're likely to entertain in terms of this change? If the answer is no, then well, we would reject it. But if the answer is yes, then we do go forward and start doing all this impact analysis and assessment and such. Okay, so there's always that that informal part of a change control process where you'd have discussions with the project board or the sponsor or the user to see whether it's worth going forward first. Okay, what we can then do is wait for a decision, and the decision would be to either approve. So we approve the change and approve the extra work. Okay, it may well be we get reject. Okay, so the change is rejected. We're not going to go forward with it. Or we might get a defer. We defer the decision because it's not the right time at this point to make the decision on that. And the final step that we would have is implement. So if the change, to do change as an example, if we decided to approve that change, okay, what would happen is we need to implement that. So we would start looking at creating additional activity in the plan that's required in order to implement that issue. Okay, update the plans, get it all signed off, and away we go. If there's a result there that this plan is then going to go into exception, well, we're back here again. Okay, raise an exception plan. Oh, sorry, raise an exception report. Whoops, and pass all this on to the project board to decide. Okay, so they're quite closely linked, these two frameworks. Okay, and that's a change control. With regards to changes, who can make changes? Well, typically the user, sponsor. It may be that they delegated to a change control board, usually CCB, or a change authority, or the project manager could well be given authority to decide on changes. Okay, keep things nice and slick. So there you go, and that's the change control procedure that we would look at. Finally, what I got is transition and close. It's not too much on this. I think it's the last slide actually. Transition and close. We're looking at project closure activities. Okay. What we've got is we need to prepare for handover and close as part of the PMP. So when we're building the PMP way back in initiation, what we will be doing is making sure that we've got some detailed plans for how we transfer the outputs of the project into the business as usual areas. And this is where we trigger up change management. Now, you know, we've not spoken about change management much in any of the sessions this week. And it's really important. You know, you can increase your project success by up to 80% by having effective change management. And this is where planning handover and transition is really important during the initiation stages. All too often, projects seem to fail because people don't adopt the outputs from the project. And the reason they don't adopt is because organizations don't get their change management right. You know, people are often fearful of change, you know, the new way of doing things, you know, am I going to be good enough? What's been wrong with what I've been doing for the last 20 years? You know, it's fear of change essentially. And what we need to do is we need to bring people in very early on in the project so they feel a sense of ownership and feel a sense of guiding the outcomes. Yeah, so we're giving people that responsibility and making them feel part of the change, and that way it will make the transition that much easier. Because they know what's coming. It's nothing worse than, you know, sort of them finding out that we've been working on this for the last 2 years, but we've only just told them like a week before we go live. It's just not good practice, is it? Okay. So really do involve the users and the people who are going to be affected by the project outcome very early on, okay? And that can all be incorporated as part of your closure plan that we do very early on in the project. Okay, closure actually happens, of course, at the end of the project when we're looking at establishing the acceptance criteria and whether we've actually met that criteria or not. Now, the established criteria would have been done again early on in the project, if not before the project even started. And then we manage that throughout. And then at the end of the project, we say, have we met the acceptance criteria? Okay, does it do this? Does it do this? Does it do this? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Excellent. Okay, we get sign off. Okay. Also part of closing is making sure we capture and complete lessons and share those lessons. Okay, what went well, what didn't go so well, we need to understand that, and that way it gives us continual improvement for what we're doing next. Okay, make sure we get acceptance from operations. So all of that information you've been building up, you will hand over so that to whoever's maintaining the products do actually understand what it's all about and how to do that. Also, any risks as well. You might have risks that are still a threat to the output. Okay, they've never actually materialized, but they're still there. So hand over information on that as well. And finally, post-project activities, including benefits realization, where it may well be the case that we have year 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and over that period of time, there will be a series of benefits reviews that are undertaken by that business unit to make sure that we're getting achievable, measurable improvements that meet the business case and achieve the benefits that we identified back in the project, which of course was the key driver in the first place. Okay. That's benefits realization. Now, all that needs to be planned as well as part of the PMP. Okay, so don't fall into the trap that project closure activities only happen at project closure. Yeah, they happen and they begin right at the beginning of the project where we're planning what needs to be done there. Okay. Right, good. Okay then. Well, we didn't do too bad in the end. It's just turned the hour there. Okay, given the delays we had. So apologies for that once more again. The last slide I've got here is end project report. Summarize everything that I've just said into an end project report, which is used during project closure to show how the project has performed against the project initiation documentation. Okay, that's basically your final report. And in that end project report, you can encompass everything that I've just talked about in terms of lessons learned, post-project review details, any follow-on actions that you've got, acceptance criteria, and so on. Summarize it all in that report. Keep it nice and together. Okay, good. There you go. I see JP, he's put in a load of stuff into the chat there about future courses. So there you go. They're on the screen and they're on the chat. If you want more information on any of this, then do get in touch with us. These are just a few events that we run. We got Project Fundamentals, which is very much for beginners, same as Prince2 Foundation. You can have Agile Foundation. You can have Change Management Foundation. If you're going to get stuck into that, I always feel that even with experienced project managers, you can go breadthways rather than up and down, and rather than go program management, portfolio management, quite a lot in regard to project management. If you want to become an excellent project manager, I would really recommend looking at change management. Yeah, so that you're a jack of all trades, and also look at other techniques like Agile, APM, Prince2, so you become a great project manager as opposed to an average program manager. Okay. So all good stuff. Thank you for your feedback, by the way, everybody. Really good to keep in touch with you guys again. I did see a name the other day. I don't know if she's in on this session, but Margaret. I remember you from about 20 years ago when you were working for RNIB. Good to see some good names coming back into the fray. Get in touch with us if you need any advice on training or qualifications or anything like that. We've got quite a lot of experience under our belt. Okay, established in 1994. I've been here since 1999. So crikey. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that. We do classroom training. We can come to you if you've got a small group of people, or we do weekly virtual classroom sessions as well as e-learning. Okay. So all good stuff. And finally, I will put this up one more time. This final slide of the season. We like to be the first for everything. So do get in touch with us if you need anything at all. We're very enthusiastic with the way we do things. Okay, we consider ourselves the best in the world, and I don't think we're too far from that, to be honest. If we can't answer your questions, then I don't think anybody else can. So hopefully I've given you good service on this. Hope you've enjoyed the whole project series, from absolute beginners to changes to Let's Dance to Rebel. I'm off to start my Spotify up now, I think, based on that. And good luck with your projects going forward. Okay, take care.